Let's talk about the spoilers for JJK Chapter 236. And we were coming off a 2-week break, a well-earned 2-week break, and I'm going to go right into the meat and potatoes of this chapter, which is that Gojo died this chapter. And a lot of people were expecting Sukuna to do something this chapter, but him cutting Gojo into 3 pieces off screen, that is brutal. And we opened up with a flashback of Gojo talking to Geto in heaven, saying, "Oh man, it looks like I'm dead." And they have, a long conversation about going north or south, which could mean reincarnation, but the main takeaway here is that, Gojo is dead. Or, if you really hold on to desperate levels of copium, you can say that Gojo actually turned around because he said, "I'll talk to you guys later." And I'm going to be a little off the cuff in this video because this is a pretty important chapter. This is one that I think we just need to discuss in general. And first, I just want to go over how Sukuna killed Gojo in this chapter, because this is confusing a lot of people. Some people think Mahoraga was the one to do it, or they don't realize how he was able to cut through infinity. And in this chapter, we found out that Sukuna never intended to directly kill Gojo with the Shikigami. He was just watching Mahoraga's adaptation to find a way to get past infinity himself. And once he saw Mahoraga use something he could mimic, well, he copied it himself and killed Gojo. And the elite translation says that Sukuna cut the space around Gojo itself, because it doesn't really matter if the pocket of infinite space is around Gojo if all of the space, including the space that Gojo occupies, is cut at once. Or in other terms, he cut through space instead of targeting his CT towards Gojo, so the CT of Gojo had nothing to stop because the spatial manipulation or minor spatial manipulation of Dismantle went right by. Because to get past infinity, you really have to have an indirect way of hitting Gojo, so that's why things like telekinesis or things that just don't have to interact with the barrier to begin with can get past him. But man, I have to say, this is a brutal way for Gojo to go out. He pretty much just got obliterated and then woke up in heaven and had a whole monologue about how he thought he was going to be good enough. And seeing the reactions of his students, my god, these guys are in such bad shape. Maki is like holding on to Yuta's shoulder as they're both about to cry. This is fucking dark. And I have to say, Gojo, I don't think he was the honored jobber. He wasn't exactly just a footnote. He got rid of Mahoraga, and him doing that, that'll probably open up not only a Megami power-up later, but it also means that Sukuna can't do what he just did to Gojo to every single other person, because a guy with perfect mimicry who can mimic parts of the adaptation of his OP Shikigami, that is an overpowered combo, and like a lot of people suspected, Ten Shadows Sukuna is the strongest character in Jujutsu Kaisen. But there's just an air of coldness in this chapter with the way that Sukuna talks to Gojo, the way Gojo just died off screen. It's a shock to not only the reader, but the people in the story as well. And Sukuna standing over Gojo at the end, congratulating him, saying, "You did well, and I'll never forget you." On the one hand, he is acknowledging Gojo for the first time in the fight and truly admitting this guy was notable and extremely powerful, but on the other hand, there is something so callous about this. Like, yeah, you're pretty strong, but let me add you to the list of people I've killed. This motherfucker just needs to die. He cannot keep getting away with it. And if you've been watching my channel, you know that I have always expected Gojo was going to die, but I also expected that he was going to save Megami before that happened. And some people might think that Gojo would live, and you know what, guys? I'll toss a bit of copium out here. If Gojo lives, well, he would be nerfed, because Sukuna can get past infinity now. So if you are really ride or dying this and want to say Gojo lives, well, his head's not gone, and he did say, "I'll see you guys later in the afterlife." So hold on to that and hope that Sukuna doesn't just eat him next chapter. But that being said, we are moving straight into Kashimo versus Sukuna. And this is a fight I've been hyped for a long time. Kashimo is one of those characters. First of all, he has zero chill. He does not care that Gojo died. Everyone else is crying, and this guy had already left the room like the moment he saw the Gojo 1 panel. My personal headcanon is that Kashimo ran across Urame on his way there, but she felt his killing intent and decided to just let him go by. Urame will probably just let everybody go by her until she finally runs into someone she can actually beat. Or they are about to hold back all of the students on their own in the 1v10 of the century. What will Kashimo have against Sukuna? Probably something busted, unless he also gets one shot, which is a definite possibility. But usually characters that are set up like Kashimo, they will show off their kits before they die. Maybe not Yuki, because we never saw her domain. But before Gojo died, we saw his entire kit, and we also haven't seen Sukuna's yet, and the fact if we didn't see Sukuna's kit the whole fight, he pretty much knew it was going to happen. Some people got really mad at me for saying this a few months back, but while Sukuna has a hidden CT, the likelihood of a Gojo victory was so low that it was kind of hard to get invested at times. And I'll give my overall thoughts on the fight here. I think this fight is like a solid 7 out of 10. I think there was a lot of cool stuff. There was a lot of cool stuff with 10 Shadows, and it's technically not over for Sukuna, so him not showing everything, that's not the worst. But I can't help but feel like there is this gap in this fight where we didn't really get to see Ryomen Sukuna versus Gojo Satoru. We got to see like 8 chapters of a guy getting beat on with a wheel who is inhumanly tanky, and then we just watch him bop Gojo with 1 slash. If Gojo has to die, unless there's like a Jujutsu Jesus moment where he comes back in 3 chapters, just have him fight the original form Sukuna, and you might say, okay, well he couldn't get past Infinity without 10 Shadows. First of all, we don't know what his technique is still, but we do know there is a way or an interpretation of his technique that can bypass Infinity, so why not just have him figure that out in a fight instead of having this massive 10 Shadows battle? Especially when you have Gojo glazing for him at the end anyways and saying, oh, he was stronger than me, and he was holding back, and he was unsatisfied. How unfortunate. And was him using the wheel to bypass Infinity or mimicking Maharaga to bypass Infinity the logical way for him to do it in a reasonable amount of time? Yeah, like 99% likely he doesn't have something else. And even though I don't think it should have taken 10 chapters to get there, or like 12 chapters, the way Sukuna bypassed Infinity, it is cool and it does showcase his skill with Jujutsu. Sukuna really is unmatched in battle applications of Jujutsu and understanding of Jujutsu compared to even a guy with the 6 eyes, and that's just how it is in JJK. But if the end result is Gojo gets chopped into 3 pieces and his Infinity gets bypassed again in this series, Infinity is one of those abilities that sounds unbelievably overpowered, and it is on paper, but every single time it's used, it never actually saves Gojo from anything important. Gojo either completely flexes on somebody who is 10 times weaker than him with Infinity, or it just winds up getting bypassed. I just don't think that's the most interesting way to see Gojo and Sukuna fight each other, because I want to see hands be thrown. I want to see four-arm Sukuna fight Gojo, and some of you may say, oh, well, if he wouldn't have a way past Infinity. That's not really the point. The point is, I think it would have been more interesting. Because let's be real, when we heard about Gojo versus Sukuna at the beginning of this series, nobody was expecting a guy getting punched in the face while a wheel spins and then he one-shots him. And I know this is a bit negative, and I have quite a few thoughts on this fight overall, and I have been negative in the past, but so many people were very excited about Gojo and his showcases in this fight. But now that Gojo is dead and all the Gojo fans are pissed and hate this fight, I can say whatever I want. Because really the end of this fight was effectively a one-shot, because the only difference between Gojo getting one-shot and not getting one-shot was Sukuna figuring out how to bypass the Infinity. And either he amped the output tremendously, or the cutting through space is just that much more powerful. And I don't know how I feel about that, and I don't know how I feel about characters saying, oh, he was holding back, because when you have characters of this caliber and they're like, oh, one was holding back, well, are they really having the battle of the strongest then? There are no statements that Gojo's reinforcement was worse, and they said his RCT was back to full from being in the zone, yet here he is getting one shot. So I guess Sukuna is just like that, and he's on the gauntlet, which is kind of unfortunate for Gojo fans, but that's how it is sometimes in JJK. And I'm really excited to see where the series goes next, because if they get Megumi free, Yuji and Megumi might be the only characters that can actually fight Sukuna now. Because in chapter 235, we got statements that having your own cursed energy hit you does less damage, and well, both of these guys would be soaked in Sukuna's. Or Kashimo will finally put the I'm equal to Ryu arguments to rest and showcase that he is in fact a Himothy. But that's just my opinion, and let me know yours in the comments below, because I'm sure many of you have a lot to say about this chapter. And if you like content like this, and usually less negative content, subscribe for more. And as always, thanks for watching.